Last time on a Tekken Retrospective, Kazuya collected sneakers and proceeded to throw his father Heihachi off of a cliff, killing him instantly. Also, I paid a visit to Tom and Jerry Cafe, they have PS4 by the way, and was banned from it. Alright, that's all. Now on to Tekken 2. What do you mean it's only on PS5? But Tom and Jerry Cafe only has PS4!
もしもし、私だけど今どこ？
That and I kinda also got blacklisted. The biggest fighting game of 1994 returns with a new installment, this time packing an even larger roster, with better and improved graphics and mechanics, and a final boss to make you f***ing smash 50 of your controllers one after the other until you finally beat it like an hour later. After the huge hit that was the first Tekken back in 1994, Namco immediately hopped on the train and began development for the next installment, this time focusing more on fluid character movement, a more complex and diverse playstyle with more characters to choose from, and a kangaroo who also has a dinosaur counterpart. Yeah. After the game wrapped up development for arcades, the PlayStation port also began development, which mainly consisted of rewriting the code to fit the console's memory better, and this took them a few months. The arcade version of the game was released on June 21st, 1995 in Japan, and the PS1 port followed suit a year later, on March 29th, 1996 in Japan, and August 27th of that same year in North America. Let's take a look at the second coming of the series, Tekken 2. So, Tekken 2, as you would expect, took what was created with the first Tekken and expanded on it, honestly pretty greatly. With slightly more fluid movement on the old 2D backgrounds and infinite stages, sidesteps were, kinda introduced. They were called missteps and were exclusive and unique to Kazuya. And also Yoshimitsu, kinda, until you accidentally commit seppuku. The main gameplay of its predecessor obviously makes a return with the four main buttons, the left punch, left kick, and right kick, or more simply, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Most of the returning characters have some new attacks, and then there's the matter of the new characters, which are unique to say the least, ranging from actual martial artists utilizing martial arts we'd not seen in Tekken yet, like Taekwondo and Muay Thai, and then there's the kangaroo I told you guys about. The game also went through a number of different revisions. The first installment that was released on arcades in Japan was known as version A. It was more similar to the first game in the series and lacked polish, with some characters being significantly overpowered, while others such as Kuma were lacking updated moves to set them apart from the previous game. An update was released a month later, with the arcade version proudly displaying a version B logo on the title screen. Tekken 2 version B featured bug fixes, damage balancing, block stun recovery, an improved juggle system, several new moves, and modified AI. The third and final revision was the PlayStation 1 home release of the game, which was basically Tekken 2 version B but with a few modifications and bug fixes. And also easier AI that doesn't f***ing murder you. The PlayStation version also added many new game modes that would go on to become staples of the series, such as Team Battle, Time Attack, Survival, and of course Practice Mode. Team Battle would allow you to choose several characters and duke it out against an opponent's team, with each character losing being eliminated until one of the teams are fully out of characters to fight with. Time Attack was similar to arcade mode, but was more competitive in that it challenged you to go through the fights and win as fast as possible, with leaderboards showing the fastest win times from different players. And Survival being another mode similar to arcades, however with each battle should you take damage, on the next one your health would remain the same and would not recover, adding a huge layer of challenge into the mix. All these new additions make Tekken 2 a huge seller, and it far surpassed the likes of Virtua Fighter and other fighting games on the market at the time. However, new mechanics and modes aren't the only big addition, as while we have the characters we played as back in Tekken 1 with some improvements, we also have a variety of new characters. Of course, the classic characters we all know and love from the first game have returned, such as Kazuya, Heihachi, King, Law, Michelle, Nina, Paul, and Yoshimitsu. We also have some of the other characters as unlockables as you go through the arcade mode. Anna, Armor King, Devil, Ganryu, Kuma, Kunimitsu, Lee, Prototype Jack, and Wang. Not only have all these characters returned with some improvements both technically and visually with some new designs, but we also have a small selection of brand new unique characters added into the fray. Let's jump into the first one, Baek Do-san, who is a Taekwondo master. He attacks martial law's dojo and injures his students to catch his attention as he wants to fight him at the tournament for some reason. We also have Bruce Irvin, a Muay Thai master who suffers from amnesia and also works as Kazuya's bodyguard. Lei Wulong, a Chinese cop and kung fu master who enters the tournament in an effort to arrest Kazuya. Almost the same as Jun Kazama, an animal rights activist who is also after Kazuya. Other than them, we have Roger and Alex, a kangaroo and a genetically altered dinosaur duo, as well as Jack 2, the new and improved model of Jack from the last game. Tekken 2 takes place a full 2 years after the events of the first King of Iron Fist tournament, where Kazuya took out his father Heihachi Mishima and tossed him off of the same cliff he was flung from as a child, presumably to his death. Kazuya had taken over the Mishima Zaibatsu and began his reign of terror. Over the course of 2 years, the main protagonist of the first game would transform into a power-hungry psychopath, who began conducting experiments on live humans and live animals during his time as the head of the Mishima Zaibatsu, the subjects of which were all taken through the means of trafficking, among other crimes like extorting money from rival organizations, as well as hiring assassins to murder people from said rival organizations he didn't like. Evil took control of him completely as he gave in to the devil more and more. This was when the animal rights activist and seasoned martial artist in her own right Jun Kazama caught wind of this, and wanted to bring Kazuya to justice, who already had almost an army at his side and several bodyguards, including the Muay Thai champion Bruce Irvin, Nina Williams' sister Anna Williams, as well as the sumo Rikishi Ganryu. Kazuya had announced the second King of Iron Fist tournament. This was a perfect opportunity for Jun to get to him. The closer she got, the more she sensed the mysterious power within him. With her being a Kazama, their blood and power is able to suppress the devil gene. She came to the conclusion that the devil's work and influence was what was eating away at Kazuya, and wanted to make an effort to bring him back to the light and free him of the devil's grasp. Unbeknownst to Kazuya, however, is the fact that his father Heihachi survived the fall just as Kazuya did many years ago. This time, however, Heihachi survived without the help of the devil gene awakening inside of him. He did not have devil's blood. He survived out of his pure strength alone. Over the course of the 2 years between the King of Iron Fist Tournament 1 and 2, Heihachi had been training tirelessly in an effort to specifically combat the devil within Kazuya, and to one day come back and exact his revenge, taking back the Mishima Zaibatsu. Nina Williams was also tasked with assassinating Kazuya Mishima. She entered the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2. The intervention of her sister Anna, however, would prove a big fork in the road for Nina, as she failed to carry out her contract. She was captured by the Mishima Zaibatsu forces and was then subjected to one of their experiments. She would forcefully be put into cryosleep in a research experiment known as the cold sleep. Anna, however, would soon also ask to be subjected into the experiment on her own accord. The reason for this strange request was one or both of these two. The first being she genuinely missed her sister as time passed, with the way she had genuinely no purpose in her life and knew nothing besides quarrel with her in their pointless sibling rivalry. The second being her jealousy over Nina, as she would be able to preserve her youth while being frozen in time while Anna would age, and so her request was approved as she was put into the cold sleep alongside her sister. Meanwhile, King's orphanage was going badly as he was unable to keep supporting and sustaining it financially. He turned to heavy drinking, which is where his old rival Armor King caught wind. Although they were once bitter enemies, they were close friends now, and Armor King was heartbroken to hear that King had gone missing because of a child's death within his orphanage. Armor King later found his friend in an alleyway, mentally broken. He lifted him up and gave his old rival his jaguar mask, bringing him to train and also helping him manage the orphanage to get him back in fighting shape and spirit just in time for the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2. Meanwhile, martial law was able to open a dojo after Tekken 1. However, before the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2, Baek Do-san attacks the dojo and tears it to pieces, severely injuring all the students. Baek does not elaborate why he does this, he just does it. Okay, pause. In the PAL manual for the game, it's actually revealed that martial law falls short on the right deal on negotiations to acquire the dojo by a real estate company, and so they sent out Baek Do-san to teach him a lesson? I don't know what's the point of destroying the dojo you're trying to buy, but either way, Law is enraged by this and gets himself in shape to enter the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2 to restore his dojo's reputation. Paul Phoenix is also back. Despite having lost in the previous tournament to Kazuya in a battle that lasted hours, he was still in high spirits. This time he's told by his best friend Martial Law that the King of Iron Fist tournament is coming back, and he gets excited, joining his friend in participation with one goal in mind: defeating everyone and becoming the strongest in the universe. Lee, however, was crushed in spirit after being defeated by Kazuya in the first tournament. He retreated to the mountains in seclusion and trained alone, honing his skills. That is, until he met an old man in those very mountains, Wang Jinrei, the best friend of Lee's deceased grandfather and Heihachi's father, Jinpachi Mishima. Wang Jinrei warned Lee of his father's evil actions. Lee was done with it all and loathed both his father and brother. He began to train with Wang Jinrei in those mountains before his return to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2, getting ready to take out Kazuya and, of course, his father, who was enraged and saw Lee as a traitor. Yoshimitsu is of course also back, and he's in a bit of a pickle this time, as the scientist who created the Jack 2 model and also created his artificial arm, Dr. Boskonovich, was kidnapped by the Mishima Zaibatsu. Yoshimitsu joins the tournament with one goal in mind, and that is to rescue the scientist. The tournament goes on and on as Kazuya meets Jun Kazama, whom he was intrigued by, finding her mysterious and fearless. Jun, with her Kazama blood, successfully suppressed the devil gene within Kazuya, and after their match, the two slowly began to form a relationship of sorts, with Jun trying her absolute best to steer Kazuya on the right path. In other words, she really just said, "I can fix him." Over the short time period the tournament went on, the two got into a brief relationship, and sure enough, they hit it off. However, it was time to get down to business. To his son's absolute shock, Heihachi Mishima had returned. He didn't die from the fall he took after all. Heihachi tore through most of the enemies in the tournament, but would lose in the semi-final round to Paul Phoenix, who earned the right to a rematch against Kazuya in the final round, getting the chance to right his wrong from 2 years ago in the last tournament. Paul, however, like a f***ing dumbass, would get stuck in traffic before the final round and wouldn't be able to compete, so the tournament officials had to reinstate Heihachi, allowing him to replace Paul, whom they had forced to forfeit the match. And in the final round, we'd see a repeat of the battle that took place 2 years ago in the first King of Iron Fist tournament. Father and son were reunited and are once again killing each other. This time, Heihachi had the upper hand, as he had trained tirelessly for the past 2 years specifically to combat the devil within Kazuya, who was in a sort of internal struggle, wanting to unleash the devil within him and let it take over, but also having that power suppressed under his relationship with Jun and his good side. But after being overpowered enough, darkness did engulf the area where Kazuya and Heihachi were fighting. As an aura began to surround Kazuya, he had awakened the power within him at last in the battle between himself and his father. He had completely let go of himself and sold his soul to the devil. Despite Jun's efforts, devil had taken over. The two continued to battle, and it would prove even more pointless for Kazuya, as he was still being overpowered by his father Heihachi. Despite the devil's power being in the palm of his hands, Heihachi took control of the battle and defeated Kazuya. All of Kazuya's efforts would prove pointless as the devil form faded away from him. He was knocked unconscious by his father Heihachi, and in the eye of a waking volcano, Heihachi once again holds Kazuya in his arms, the same way he did when Kazuya was just a 5-year-old boy. With no hesitation, Heihachi eliminates the evil of his son from the world. Kazuya plunged into the active volcano, unconscious, before he would be devoured by it. The King of Iron Fist Tournament 2 had come to an end, and Heihachi had killed his son Kazuya Mishima and eliminated the devil. In the end, despite Heihachi's past and present actions, he was the lesser of two evils, and now one of those evils' influence had been eliminated from the world for good. And that was Tekken 2. It's a sad tale about a man who could have been good but sadly succumbed to the devil and had to die for the choice he'd made. But enough about that. It's time to point and laugh at shit now. Much like the first game, the endings of Tekken 2 are absolutely comical, despite the fact that there's some good soundtracks here and there, and not the same one track constantly playing in every ending. That doesn't save them from being unintentionally hilarious. You have Jun's ending, where she's dropped off by the school bus and then meets up with every animal in existence, then rides a horse with the animals and begins to walk off into the sunset. Then you have Yoshimitsu, who looks at this helicopter that's holding Dr. Boskonovich hostage, and then he's just like, yeah. Martial Law's ending takes place in his dojo with his best friend Paul. He looks at Paul and is like, can you do this? He then proceeds to do a somersault kick. Then Paul gives us the goofiest reaction of all time, rivaled only by Kazuya's face in his Tekken 1 ending. In King's ending, he goes back to the old orphanage he once managed and sees the children playing in the window with their caretaker, who are all once again real-life models used in the game. He begins to walk off before the kids all see him and begin to swarm him, showering him with affection, and showing us just how much they missed him, while he's just like, yeah! Anna's ending just has her showering while Nina comes in and snaps a Polaroid of her covering her tits. What was the point of that? But everything I've shown you so far doesn't even begin to come close to the utter goofiness that is Kazuya's ending. So, Kazuya has just defeated Devil, and he walks off turning his back on him. Devil rolls his eyes forwards like, nah. He gets up and shoots a laser beam at an unwitting Kazuya, but out of nowhere, Heihachi comes in, and he saves Kazuya. Kazuya just looks at him like, huh? While Heihachi probably yells, why didn't you dodge? Kazuya is just like, He grabs Heihachi and begins to run with him, using him as a human shield. Devil is like, but Kazuya throws him at Devil, who knocks him away, before Kazuya hits him with a dragon uppercut, and he just stares at the screen, giving yet another iconic smile. First of all, why was Heihachi done so dirty in this ending? And that was Tekken 2, the second coming of the series. It certainly took a different approach to the first game with a more dark tone, yet still somewhat maintained the traditional old fighting gamey vibe that came with games like Virtua Fighter along with it. Generally speaking, most people like to call Tekken 4 the darkest entry of the series and label it as the black sheep. I do agree with the latter statement to an extent, but only for the technical aspects of the game. When it comes to aesthetics, tone, and darkness, I feel Tekken 2 matches it greatly. But we'll talk about that when we get to Tekken 4 itself. Out of the original trilogy on the PS1, I think Tekken 2 has to be my favorite, not due to childhood memories or anything, but just the dark and heavy atmosphere of the game, the haunting presence and difficulty of Devil, and what the music adds to all of this. Much like Tekken 1, I don't have many childhood memories with this game as I was too young to properly remember the PS1, but I did play all 3 games on Tekken 5's arcade history mode on the PS2, so there is that. Tekken 2 was such a good game. So good, in fact, that it costs $10,000 on the PS5. A small price to pay for not having to go to Tom and Jerry Cafe, if you ask me. You know what, Neko Arc? You are blacklisted from all future Large Jin videos. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed as always, and please remember to subscribe if you did, and stay on the lookout for when I talk about the later installments of these games in the coming weeks. Bye now!